Tonight's case features a true story so fantastic it seems hard to believe. A gaming contest with 5 unique prizes valued at over $150,000. A set of enigmatic clues to find them. And while 2 of these prizes were found, 3 more of them are still lost to this day. Perhaps you can help. Join me. You may be able to help solve a mystery. It was 1982. Atari was king of the video games market. With the success of the 1980 game Adventure, they decided to make a series of games in the same genre. And with a stroke of marketing genius, they hatched a plan to get many people clamoring to play them. Swordquest was going to be a series of 4 games for the Atari 2600. Each would come packaged with an instruction manual and a mini-story created by DC Comics, written by Roy Thomas and Jerry Conway, the 2 men who created Conan the Barbarian and The Punisher, respectively. At the time, video games didn't have the ability to tell incredible stories like we see today. Adding the comics, a more full tale could be told. However, the cross-media marketing didn't end there. Inside each game, there was a series of puzzles and mini-games that, if completed, would flash a brief hint on screen. This would clue the player to open their comic to a certain page and panel, and inside that panel there would be a secret word hidden in plain sight. Eventually, this would lead the player to find 10 secret words, but the puzzle kept going. They would then have to find another secret clue to weed out which of the 5 words were false. If they could correctly guess the 5 words needed and send them into Atari, they would be flown out to the company's headquarters in LA, where they would compete by playing a special version of the game, and whoever completed the game first would win a prize valued at over $25,000. All in all, there were supposed to be 5 prizes, 1 for each game, valued at $25,000 each. The Talisman of Penultimate Truth, a solid gold pendant inlaid with diamonds and 12 precious stones, 1 for each of the zodiac signs, along with a tiny white gold sword. The Chalice of Light, a goblet made of platinum and gold studded with diamonds, rubies, sapphires, pearls, and green jade. The Crown of Life, an 18-karat gold crown decorated with diamonds, rubies, sapphires, and aquamarines. The Philosopher's Stone, a large, solid piece of white jade enclosed in an 18-karat gold box beset with emeralds, rubies, and diamonds. And finally, a grand prize, which the first 4 winners would be called back to compete for. The Sword of Ultimate Sorcery, a jewel-encrusted sword with an 18-karat gold handle and a gleaming silver blade, blazing with diamonds, emeralds, rubies, and sapphires, valued at over $50,000. Altogether, these 5 prizes were worth a whopping $150,000, which, adjusted for inflation in 2020, puts them at over $400,000. These artifacts were to be created by Franklin Mint, who you might recognize as the company behind most of the commercials for pseudo-rare coins and other collectibles. Franklin Mint was chosen because they, along with DC Comics, had also just been acquired by Atari's parent company, Warner Communications. The marketing was set in place, and the gauntlet was thrown. In October of 1982, the first game in the series, Earthworld, was released. Each of the games was to be centered on a certain classical element: earth, fire, water, and wind. And each of them was to have a real-world philosophical or religious design incorporated into solving its puzzles. Earthworld was designed around the zodiac. Players had to walk through the game's 12 rooms and find items. Only by placing the correct items in the corresponding room would reveal the clue, which would lead the player to the correct page and panel in the comic that came with the game. But the comic also helped the player solve the puzzles in Earthworld. For example, if one of the characters in the comic used a sword against Taurus the Bull, this was a hint that they should drop the sword in the room dedicated to the zodiac sign Taurus. And as mentioned before, there were 10 secret words hidden in the comic, but only 5 of them were the correct ones. At the front of the comic was a poem, and if you look close enough, the words prime and numbers were a slightly different color. This hinted to the player that they had to use the 5 words found on pages with prime numbers. Ultimately, this would lead the players to submit the phrase, "Quest in Tower Talisman Found." In total, Earthworld sold around 500,000 copies. Of that, 5,000 players submitted the answers for the tournament, and of those, only 8 people submitted the correct ones. In May of 1983, these lucky few were flown out to California to play a custom version of the game And after 48 minutes, an unemployed 20-year-old man from Michigan named Stephen Bell was crowned the champion, and given the talisman of penultimate truth. In an interview after winning, Bell was asked what he intended to do with the talisman. He responded rather unenthusiastically, "Sell it, I guess." The interviewer, joking, responded, "To whom? Who's in the market, do you think, for a $30,000 heavy golden zodiac medallion? You're going to have to pay around $4,000 in taxes on it, so you better melt it. What are you going to do with the money?" All Bell responded was, "No plans yet. I didn't expect to win. Maybe I'll get a car. I've never had one." Secondhand reports say that Bell claims he had the talisman melted down and sold the gold and gems for $15,000, but he kept the tiny sword made of white gold. Regardless of Bell's apathy towards his prize, Swordquest didn't finish there. In February of 1983, the second game in the series was released, Fireworld. This time, the game's puzzles revolved around the Jewish Kabbalah, or Tree of Life. Many have insisted that Fireworld was much harder to understand than Earthworld, that the puzzles seemed more nonsensical, and they're not wrong. For the uninitiated, watching screens for this are beyond confusing. But either through cracking the code or simply finding the hidden words in the comic and then guessing the correct 5, many more contestants got it right. In fact, more than 50 did. But Atari had a clause in the contest that only permitted 50 people to attend, so they issued an extra challenge. The players who got the 5 words correct now had to write in an essay about what they liked about the game, and a panel of judges would pick the 50 best ones to come to California. One of these contestants was Michael Rideout, a 22-year-old man who had entered the Earthworld contest but only got 4 of the 5 words correct. This time, however, he was spot on. When he landed at the San Francisco International Airport, he noticed Stephen Bell was there as well. He recognized him from his picture in the Atari Club magazine. Rideout says their meeting was cordial, but both him and Bell were a little shy. That night they had a banquet for the 50 members of the contest. At the dinner, many of his fellow contestants were asking each other how many clues they had all found. Embarrassed, Michael Rideout admitted he had only found 1. He got the other 4 clues just from finding the hidden words in the comic book. Because of this, Rideout didn't think he had a good chance at winning, but he was excited to enjoy his trip to San Francisco. Atari had even planned a trip for the contestants to go to Alcatraz Island. The next morning, Rideout awoke and went to an event space set up in the hotel where representatives from Atari had set up 50 machines for people to play the game on. Much like the special editions used for Earthworld, the version of Fireworld played at the contest was much easier. Rideout explained, quote, "One thing about the home version was that you have to have 4 different objects in one room and another object in another room in order to trigger a clue. In the contest version, you had to have the 4 objects in one room, but you didn't have to have another object in some other room. To accompany this, each player was given a sheet with 10 riddles, which served as a clue to help them. Rideout says he took a brief look at the riddles, but he couldn't make heads or tails of them, so he resolved he wasn't going to come in first and just calmly played the game like he did at home, going around and systemically collecting objects and putting them in various rooms. He says he knew about the Tree of Life because he had dabbled in tarot cards in high school, and one of the tarot spreads is based on the Tree of Life. Using this knowledge, he noticed a pattern. In the spot he normally found clue number 1 in the regular cartridge, he found the 11th and final clue. After thinking for a moment, he thought maybe the first and last clues were simply swapped. So he quickly went to where he normally found the last clue, and sure enough, it was the first one. Quote, "From that point on, I just started finding all the different clues in order very quickly. After about the first 6 or 7 clues, I started to get a little more excited. Rideout began to believe he might actually win. Quote, every time I would find a new clue, my heart would beat a little bit faster. When I finally did find the last clue, I was about to fall over. Even after winning, Rideout couldn't believe it. It was a shock. It seemed like it was unreal. I kept thinking, okay, I'm going to wake up any minute and I'll be in bed in the hotel waiting for the contest to begin. In fact, when they gave him the chalice to take his picture, Rideout reported that he felt like he was going to have a heart attack. Representatives from Atari offered to call an ambulance, but Rideout eventually calmed down. After the first contest for Earthworld, Atari let Stephen Bell fly home with the talisman himself on the airplane. But for Fireworld, they took an extra precaution. After Michael Rideout returned home to Georgia, they sent it to the bank his brother worked at in Atlanta in an armored car. From there, his brother delivered it to him. Unlike Stephen Bell, Rideout was determined to keep the chalice. And to this day, he reportedly keeps it in a bank vault. He says over the years that people have pushed him to sell it, and he's even considered it. But he's been paranoid about even taking it to a jeweler to be appraised, afraid that he might get it back with a jewel or 2 missing. After the contest, Rideout says his parents were extremely proud of him. Before this, they'd yell at him for staying up late at night playing video games, not studying for college. Quote, "I was like a video game zombie. They didn't like it at all." But after winning the chalice, his father said, quote, "Well, I'll never complain to you again about playing video games." However, according to Michael, this didn't last long, and his father began complaining about his hobby once again. Unfortunately, the next game in the series, Waterworld, would be its last. The video game crash of 1983 would absolutely devastate the industry, with the oversaturation of the console gaming market and the rise of interest in personal computers, which were seen as capable of doing so much more than being just a hobby. The revenue of the gaming industry dropped from $3.2 billion in 1983 to just $10 million in 1985, a drop of almost 97%. Atari was in dire straits. While they once reportedly made up a third of Warner Communications' entire profit, it was now trying to get rid of the video game company as it was hemorrhaging them money. Waterworld did get made, however, but the game was only available to members of the Atari Club, a subscription service tied to their official magazine that would also feature exclusive games. Due to this, mixed with the crash of the video games market, there are precious few copies of Waterworld still in the wild. And currently, the game goes for around $250 on eBay. But since Waterworld was out there, people had begun sending in secret words to be entered to win the next rare item, the Crown of Life. After all, the contest had to go on, didn't it? Well, according to Michael Rideout, who also entered the Waterworld contest, he got a letter from Atari offering him $15,000 to agree to the cancellation of the contest. Reportedly, he and Stephen Bell both got this offer, and the people who entered the Waterworld contest, only 15 people in total this time, all got $2,000. The catch was, if anyone turned it down, the contest still had to happen. Rideout recalls when he was at the Fireworld contest, a group of people approached him and told him, quote, "Now if Atari ever comes to you, make sure you don't agree to anything about canceling the contest." At the time, he said sure, but now faced with the possibility of getting a $15,000 paycheck for doing nothing, it seemed too tempting. He assumed that somebody else would say no, so he took the money. Unfortunately, it seems like nobody else did. And to this day, the Crown of Life, the Philosopher's Stone, and the Sword of Ultimate Sorcery have never been found. Rideout himself has confirmed that they did in fact exist. They were all on display at the Fireworld competition, being closely guarded. He specifically recalls the Philosopher's Stone being impressive. They had the box open, and inside he said there was an amazing chunk of white jade. But the Philosopher's Stone and the rest of the prizes are still missing to this day. There are three prevailing theories on what happened to them. One is that the prizes could have simply been melted down by Franklin Mint and made into other items to help recuperate the costs of the contest. The second theory is that when Atari was being sold off by Warner Communications, the company was bought by Jack Tramiel, who had produced the Commodore 64. We do have a second-hand story from an ex-Atari programmer who claims to have seen the Sword of Ultimate Sorcery hanging above the fireplace at Tramiel's house. This was never confirmed, however, and in 2012, Jack Tramiel passed away. So it's possible that the sword and other prizes could be anywhere. To this day, the only surviving prize from the Swordquest contest is the Chalice of Light, still held by Michael Rideout. Some have speculated that the rest of the prizes could have been passed through various hands, and even been sold off at yard sales or exist today as family heirlooms. If you, or anyone you know, has seen anything that could be recognized as these objects, please contact us here at Unsolved Mysteries of Gaming. Hey, thank you so much for watching this video. We hope you enjoyed. It was a lot of work, so if you like the concept of an Unsolved Mysteries of Gaming, please let us know and we will make some more of them. Speaking of other things we do, check out our weekly live shows and follow us on Twitch so you can watch us record them live and interact with us in the chat. And if you can, maybe head over to our Patreon where you can help us create more things like this. But either way, thank you so much again for watching, and until next time, have a wonderful day. Could have been passed through various hands and even been sold off at yard sales or exist as family heirlooms. That's really funny, the idea of that.
Passed down from generation to generation.
Son, this is the Sword of Ultimate Sorcery.
Use this to kill a dragon. Go.
After the contest, Rideout says his parents were extremely proud of him. Before this, they yell at him. It's so funny. It's so funny. It's so funny. Unfortunately, according to Michael, this didn't last long. It's so bad.
What?
He won $25,000. After the contest, Rideout says his parents were extremely proud.
Yeah, I can't take it seriously.